Good afternoon, everyone who is in the Eastern time zone and Central and Mountain, I guess. Good morning or good evening, as it may attend to anyone else who is participating with us today. My name is Frank Fillmore. We're going to talk about IBM's Information Management portfolio. We have about 60 slides to go through in about an hour, so we have about a minute a slide. I'm going to be covering this material pretty quickly. However, I do want this to be interactive, so if you have a question, you can use the GoToWebinar tool. I just mentioned that you can hit the orange arrow button and cause the GUI to fly out and either raise your hand or use the chat or question facility, and I will try to get answers to everybody. If we have any time left over at the end, we'll try to include some Q&A then as well. Our agenda today is an introduction, a brief introduction to the Fillmore Group, an IBM business partner. We'll talk about IBM's information management acquisitions and strategy. We'll talk about different portions of the information management portfolio, the data governance, the information integration, and their data warehouse offerings. Talk a little bit about the mainframe, and we'll talk about IBM's competitive stance with Oracle. The Fillmore Group is an IBM business partner. We've been working with IBM for 25 years now. I'm a DB2 Gold consultant and information champion. My colleague Kim May, who actually prepared this presentation, is also an IBM champion. We focus on information management consulting and implementation services, implementation, configuration, tuning, performance monitoring, backup recovery, whatever it takes in order to get useful production out of your software investment with IBM. The Fillmore Group is also an authorized training partner. We offer IBM training through their website in our Towson, Maryland classroom near Baltimore. We also will bring training to your site for private on-site classes. And we're an IBM Information Management software reseller. We are certified in the InfoSphere, Optum, data management, database servers, and the Netezza IBM Information Management software portfolio. I mentioned that we perform services, implementation, and tuning for DB2. We've been working with DB2 since DB2 for ZOS version 1.2. DB2 also on the System I, the old DB2 for VSE and VM, as well as DB2 for Linux, Unix, Windows. DB2 across all platforms on which it's offered. We work with the data governance tools, information integration, what we call data interoperability, either getting data where you need it or accessing data where it exists right now in any variety of different ways. And then finally, IBM's data warehousing tools, the InfoSphere warehouse, as well as the Netezza appliance. So, what happened in 2011 as far as IBM Information Management is concerned? First of all, if any of you saw the Watson Challenge on the Jeopardy program, Watson, the IBM technology, using many of the information technologies that we'll see in this presentation today, was able to defeat two human champions in the game of Jeopardy. On June 16, 2011, IBM celebrated its 100th anniversary in New York as a company. IBM has expanded throughout the developing world in Africa, the Middle East, and is looking to build on their footprint in the BRIC countries, Brazil, Russia, India, and China. Just announced today in the Wall Street Journal a huge billion-dollar outsourcing deal for an entrepreneur in Brazil. In November, Warren Buffett bought a 5% stake in IBM, and on January 1st, Ginny Rometty became the Chief Executive Officer of IBM. So I see a hand raised. Let me see who that is and if there is a question. Do you have a question, Renu?
No.
I see your hand raised, but I'm not hearing you, so I'm going to assume that you just clicked the button. I will lower that for now and get back to questions in just a bit. So IBM's acquisition strategy, you can either build it or you can buy it, and IBM has done both. $14 billion invested in acquisitions over the past 3 years. IBM has 25,000 developers working in information management worldwide in labs that dot the globe, and $20 billion additional investment in acquisitions are planned over the next 3 years. So some significant, not by any means the only, but some of the significant acquisitions. I had mentioned Netezza before, 2010, the statistical analysis firm SPSS, Cognos Reporting, FileNet, the content management firm, Data Mirror Replication, SolidDB in-memory database, just a lot of different technologies that IBM has brought on to round out the offerings that they have built. So the strategy overall is to offer a complete portfolio of value-added information management software products. IBM's heritage is obviously in core database management, and they've done very well there for a number of years. But for a variety of reasons that you are all probably very familiar with, there is a lot more that needs to be done than just managing data from the perspective of storing it and retrieving it. And that's what these products help IBM do and IBM's customers. And we'll talk about a lot of these in more detail. So you're going to see this graphic a couple of times throughout the presentation. This is the information supply chain. And so there are different capabilities that are necessary to manage data and content, rich content, integrate it throughout the organization to get the data where you need it, get it in the form that you need it there, and to analyze the data, whether it's big data. We're hearing about streaming of gigabytes of information per hour coming in from sites like Facebook and Google, and trying to crunch all that real time as it happens, as well as numerical processing on the factory floor, or satellites delivering weather information, as well as stock trades and healthcare applications. And then finally, overlaying all of that is the necessity to govern information, govern who can access it, governing what test data looks like, and masking data, archiving data when it becomes obsolete, and decommissioning applications when they're no longer useful. So I see a question up here, so let me bring that up. Okay. Just a comment on the fact that tomorrow is Good Friday, so we might have lost some potential participants due to the long weekend and the fact that a lot of people get spring break for their children this week or next week. So we're going to talk about 4 major components of the information management portfolio: DB2, data governance, information integration, and the data warehouse. So data governance, as I mentioned before, data governance overlays all of the different aspects of managing, integrating, and analyzing data. Governance is used to ensure the quality and availability of data, the life cycle of data, from testing and developing applications all the way through archiving, as I mentioned before, data that may be obsolete. We just had a customer contact us recently that manages nuclear power plants, and they needed to be able to identify the parts that were used in the construction of those nuclear power plants for as long as those plants are active, which may be 20 or 30 or 40 years, for compliance and regulatory reasons from the NRC. And they were moving from one database management system to another, and they needed to be able to access data that might be 30 or 40 years old. Well, if you think back what data looked like 30 or 40 years ago, it certainly wasn't in a relational database. It was in another form, and 30 or 40 years from now, we may not recognize the form that the data takes, but that's an example of the life cycle governance of being able to manage data throughout its useful life, whether or not the underlying technologies change. And then finally, security and privacy. IBM's InfoSphere Guardium set of tools addresses a couple of different aspects of data access, but most importantly and especially the ability to monitor what are called privileged users. We have a lot of firewalls to keep the bad guys out, and they mostly succeed, although sometimes they don't. But we also have access issues with people who are database administrators or application developers who can look at production data and maybe access that data for reasons that have nothing to do with their job roles and responsibilities. And being able to monitor that type of database access and prevent it or report on it is very important to organizations today for, again, compliance and regulatory reasons. So this is the whole data governance product portfolio, and I'm not going to go through the eye chart, but there were a couple that I wanted to pick out. Number one on the left-hand side, let me grab a highlighter. The Optum data growth. So the idea is that I can take data which may be six months old or 1 month old or 2 years old and move it to another platform for storage, but still have it retrievable via the application, let's say a packaged ERP or even a custom developed application, but move it from the primary data store so it's not interfering with transaction processing, and your system can be as efficient as possible because most of your transaction activity occurs within the last month or the last several weeks. If you're an insurance company, you may have claims that are 30 days old, and after that the need to access them drops off dramatically. So why store them on hot spinning disks when you can move them to an archive? And there may be regulatory or compliance reasons for archiving data, but needing to maintain it for 7 years or 10 years, or in the case of our nuclear power plant management company, 30 or 40 years. Test data management, the ability to extract data from a production database, move it to a test database, but be able to mask sensitive data like social security numbers, credit card numbers, and things like that, so that real PCI information is not available, but still maintain the integrity of the data, so that if it's a Visa card in production, it still has the numbering scheme that Visa uses in test, so that you can test your application and make sure it performs the same way when you move it into production. So you have a valid subset of data, all of the data that is connected with your customer master records, such as the address and the beneficiary and all of the incumbent records that are associated with that, are all subset together, maintaining the relationships whether or not they're explicitly defined within the database via referential integrity. So lots of tools like that. The InfoSphere Optum Performance Manager, this is a legacy IBM product. It was the DB2 Performance Expert, and it has morphed over time to include lots of capabilities that allow you to see an end-to-end representation of the transaction processing, so you can see using the extended insight whether or not a transaction may be spending a lot of time in the network or on the app server or in the database, and be able to look holistically from the time that a transaction is initiated until it's completed, way beyond the database. I had mentioned Guardium before, Guardium IBM product, and so the Guardium Database Activity Monitor, you can set thresholds for the types of access, times of day, the privileged users who can access it, be able to monitor for audit purposes who has accessed what. This could also be used in conjunction with some of the retirement tools that we talked about, application retirement and data archiving. I may have a table on spinning disk in my database that hasn't been accessed in 10 years because the need for that table has gone away, or the person who used it may have retired. So you can audit your database usage and make better use of your storage assets. So just an example or an overview of the types of things that can be done with the IBM portfolio. So I mentioned the test data management. Data masking is the ability to protect sensitive information from misuse and fraud. Data growth and application retirement. The one that I didn't mention at the top is the Discover, the ability to understand and project relationships within and across data sources. And this is a very powerful tool for organizations that have undergone mergers and acquisitions. So they've brought in, they bought another line of business. Again, to use the insurance analogy, a company was bought to bring in a life line of business, whereas the company had been property and casualty and homeowners and auto. So they bring in life insurance. So there are lots of differences, and they may want to maintain the application that is currently managing the life insurance. But they would still like to know the customers that are common across all those lines of business, or if they're sending out mailings to identify the fact that the address is common among different data elements, even though they may have different names, be in different data stores and different databases, to be able to identify those relationships across data silos. One of the ways that this is deployed is actually as a consultative engagement rather than necessarily purchasing a software product. Company may acquire a new line of business, acquire a new subsidiary, and then turn on Discover to understand what data is stored where. There may be pockets of PCI information such as credit card numbers and Social Security numbers that they were unaware of or were not being treated with the level of security that they needed. And this is a good way to identify those. Mentioned Guardium. Guardium supports real-time database monitoring and protection. You can see all the different databases, even though Guardium is now an IBM product. It is not limited to IBM. So even if you don't have a DB2 database, you could still benefit from the Guardium database monitoring if you have Oracle or SQL Server or Sybase or Informix. There are no changes to your database or applications, and very granular real-time policies and auditing who does what, when, and how. So you can identify accessing the database using direct SQL as opposed to going through an application, and you can flag that as an event that you want to have monitored and reported on. So very important, again, in these very privacy-sensitive days, being able to monitor your database and make sure that someone is not gathering information that they should not or does not have anything to do with their job responsibilities. And you can prevent cyber attacks. You can prevent external threats to your database servers. One of the other things that Guardium does is it helps you identify databases. So on your network, you can go out and send probes and discover that you may have an Oracle database that somebody extracted from a data warehouse for a special purpose reporting and then just left it there. And information that may be sitting unguarded, not backed up, that no one was aware of that was out there except for some small unit in marketing or finance, and be able to identify that that data exists and either incorporate it back into your formal database platform administration environment, or do away with it entirely because it's not needed anymore. Very automated and centralized controls, again, cross DBMS, so if you're in a heterogeneous environment and you have lots of different database servers, you can use one product to manage and monitor all of your database access. You can, and finally, I'd mentioned you can find databases. You can also find and classify sensitive data. So an example of a customer that I had a few years ago, customer service reps were getting calls from people whose service was going to be cut off from a cable television company, and they were taking credit cards over the phone, and because there wasn't a field in the customer service record for credit card numbers, they were putting that into a remarks field. So in the clear, credit card number and expiration date were being keyed into remarks, and obviously that creates some privacy problems, and Guardium would be able to identify numbers of the sort that look like credit card numbers and report that back to you and say maybe you have an exposure. Optum Performance Manager, I mentioned a little bit earlier, the ability to proactively manage performance. So you can check your workload manager configuration. You can create initial WLM definitions to manage your workload so that transaction processing isn't interfered with by the analytical ad hoc reporting. There is integration with Query Tuner. So if you identify some problematic SQL, you can go into Query Tuner and try to improve that through creation of indexes or MQTs. Pure Query will help identify exactly where problematic SQL statements are coded. If you're in an environment where you're using Hibernate as an integrated development environment, your developers may not be coding SQL at all, but the SQL may be generated. I was talking to a colleague at dinner the other night, and she said a lot of times the SQL is select star from with no where clause. This is what's being generated by Hibernate, and then at the database level, they're seeing this select star for a million row table. And when you go back to the developers, you say, why are you developing an application with select asterisk from table with no where clause, which will pull back all the rows and all the columns, and they'll say, I never coded that. So Pure Query is an add-on which enables you to identify the type of SQL that comes out of the integrated development environments and that gets vended to your database and help you correct performance anomalies. So you can do historical performance reporting and analysis for capacity planning purposes, also to identify, hey, this was running great 6 months ago and now it's a dog. What's changed in that amount of time? So lots of value in terms of performance management over not only your database itself, but also the applications that access it. And we can see an example of the types of things that you would get from OPM. This is the locking dashboard. So you can see what locks are being held by on what objects, by what applications, and be able to drill down and try to take corrective action real time so you can eliminate performance bottlenecks. So I'm going to pause there for a second. We've covered very quickly the Optum portfolio. Are there any questions about Optum or what we've discussed so far? Okay, I'm going to keep rolling. So the next section that we want to cover is information integration. Again, I referred to this by the Fillmore Group's name of data interoperability, but getting the data where you need it in the form you need it at the time you need it there, using a variety of technologies from data virtualization to replication. Again, we have our organizing template of manage, integrate, analyze, and govern. So the integration is in the central section that we have here. So we're going to talk about the technologies available in there to help you integrate your data throughout the enterprise. So the four techniques or the four functions of the InfoSphere information server is to help you understand your data, to cleanse it, to transform it in whatever format you need it, and then deliver it to another application or a data warehouse or whatever server it needs to be analyzed on. The information integration organizations use it for with products like Data Stage and Quality Stage for data loading and cleansing. If you've worked with Data Stage before, you know it's industry standard ETL tool, extract, transform, and load from one database server to another. It becomes part of your information factory where it's part of the assembly line, moving data from your transaction processing systems or from a legacy system into a data warehouse, or integrating a legacy system with a packaged application. And we'll talk about those in some more detail. We'll talk about some of the foundation tools using common metadata across all of these products. So functionality like the business glossary and the metadata repositories that allow you to manage from a common understanding of what data means. So for example, if I have a customer in my organization, a customer might be defined as somebody who spent $5,000 with us in the past 2 years. And so we want to identify those as customers. Someone or an active customer, maybe somebody who spent $5,000 within the last 2 years. If they spent less than that or they haven't purchased anything from us within 2 years, they're an inactive customer. Being able to store that in one place and be able to access that so that your information architects as well as your application developers all understand the same meaning of what an active customer is very important. And then finally, the data movement and virtualization tools of change data capture, federation, and replication. So we'll talk about all of these in time. As you can see, this is the whiteboard example of the complexity of, from left to right, the data that I have in my IBM mainframe. Here on Z, I may have, I may have my packaged applications of SAP. I may have custom developed applications. I need to gather a logical understanding of my data in terms of business terms and create logical models, have those logical models transformed into real physical database models, and that's part of the deployment phase. Transform and cleanse the data so that we have consistent understanding, consistent meaning within the data of what a customer is, or a product, or a service that we offer, or even patients or providers in the healthcare industry. We need to be able to monitor all that, and then we will federate and replicate our data, and then finally it'll arrive for analysis by BI products like Cognos. It'll go into a data warehouse, or it might be part of a master data management repository that allows us to operate on the data. So this is an example of enabling us to manage our data from source transaction processing system, which is sort of a given today, and get it all the way through the delivery of data to information analytics and value-added tools so we can make informed business decisions, run our organization better, increase profitability and customer satisfaction, and lower costs. So the foundation tools, I had mentioned the business glossary, the information architect, the ability to design logical and physical data models, to create OLAP cubes within the architect. And then the information analyzer is, there is some overlap with the discovery tool, but the ability to understand relationships between data stores and across data stores, as well as within the data. So an example of analyzer, and it's a pretty simplistic one, but it helps drive the point home. If I was an automobile manufacturer or a car rental agency, or someone who dealt with automobiles, fleet management, I would have automobile make, model, and year. Well, there's a correlation between the make and model fields, because Chevy doesn't make Camrys, and Ford doesn't make CRVs, Honda makes CRVs. So I could infer from the analyzer product that there is a relationship, because there's a high correlation between the values that are found. I'm finding certain values within the model portion that correlate to certain values in the make portion, and that there's a relationship. Now, that's a pretty obvious one that most people would understand. City and state is another example of something like that. But there may be other examples of customers that are related in a way that is not readily apparent or not enforced by the data model, and the analyzer could discover that. We talked about data quality before, the ability to deduplicate data, to identify a single understanding of a customer name or a customer address, to harmonize my data so I have one customer master record regardless of the source system that these customer records may come from, whether they're transaction processing systems or legacy applications or ERP systems. I can bring the data together and have them harmonized so that I have a single record to eliminate redundancies, to enforce standards, and to get a complete and accurate view of my data. Data stage, this is the transformative tool, gets it whatever format the data is in currently in a system of record, and moves it to an operational data store or a data warehouse or a SOA process. You can actually invoke web services to, for example, if I have an event occurring on a legacy system that I developed on, let's say, a mainframe or a system I, which is my transaction processing system, and customer places an order, I could use data stage to fire off a SOA event, invoke a web service that would update my ERP system, or actually send a request to the factory floor to actually manufacture the product. It's a GUI-based tool, uses drag and drop icons to develop very complex data transformation jobs. You can see just a small example of one there. And be able to reflect, using the GUI tool, complex business processes and enable you to move the data through those processes to whatever the end result might be. Change data capture is the ability to read a database log. Oracle, DB2, Sybase, SQL Server, Informix, and then be able to take that data and do something with it. So I may want to update another database. I may just be copying database 1 changes, the deltas that occur to database 2, or I may be building a data warehouse, so I'm doing some transformation of the data, some summarization or consolidation, or I may be feeding a web service, or I may be placing data on a queue. But the bottom line is that I want to read from a transaction log within the database so that I am not doing, let's say, a full database extract every night. Most of the replacements we see for change data capture, customers were writing their own FTP jobs that were extracting data from the database, moving the data into some sort of staging area, pardon me, downloading it, and incorporating it into another data store in a batch process that may take hours, that may move millions of records per night, when the only change to the data was a few thousand records. So change data capture, real-time drip feed of the changes that occur in a transaction processing environment, move into an active secondary database for load balancing or for high availability or a data warehouse or some other use. IBM has a couple of different products in this space. One is the replication server. The replication server uses WebSphere MQ as the delivery mechanism for high-speed, low-latency replication of data, primarily, although not exclusively, from DB2 databases. Oracle is also supported as a source, and then to heterogeneous databases as targets, SQL Server, Oracle, Sybase, DB2, to move the data from one place to the other. Lots of different use cases for this. One we just engaged in with a top 50 worldwide financial organization that was migrating from an Oracle database to DB2 and wanted to do it so that they had as small as possible an outage for their applications, and we were able to reduce that outage from 5 days using batch processes that they had anticipated using to about 12 hours. And I'll actually be talking about that at IDUG if anybody on the call is going to be attending IDUG in May in Denver. The other things that I could do with replication server is I can invoke a stored procedure, or I can publish XML. So I can read the changes from a database log and then have those published in a delimited format to feed another data warehouse or for another purpose. InfoSphere Federation Server. The ability to virtualize my data. So instead of moving the data, capturing changes from a database that have occurred and then moving them someplace else, I want to be able to access my data real time wherever it resides. It may be in an Oracle database or in DB2 or in Informix, and I want to be able to issue a single query that actually joins within an SQL statement data from heterogeneous platforms on different servers. I can do that using the InfoSphere Federation server, be able to access that data and pull it together real time in a single query. And then the change data capture capability, the ability to access data wherever it resides and put it wherever you need it. So you can see the different sources and targets that are supported through the InfoSphere change data capture. One thing IBM has done in the last 6 months is that they have consolidated all of their replication technologies, change data capture, the legacy data mirror product, the InfoSphere replication server, Q replication, and their SQL replication product into a single product, which is the IBM InfoSphere Data Replication, or IIDR. It used to be a lot of confusion in the marketplace about what sources I have and the targets I have and the latency I need, And we actually, Kim and I put together a presentation on how to understand and decide which of these technologies to use in different use cases. And that used to be a purchase decision, and now it's an implementation decision. So you can actually determine what replication you need after you've bought the product and implement only that. Master data management. This is an environment which is seeing a lot of growth. One example is the InfoSphere MDM server. We have a customer that is using patient data, getting that from a variety of different providers. If you are like I am, in middle age, going to the doctors for a variety of different ailments, you go to the pharmacy to get the prescription filled, you go to the doctor, you may have to see your primary care physician and see a specialist and get some lab tests. All of these places are collecting your information, and they're collecting it in a variety of different formats. And the customer that we're working with that's looking at the InfoSphere MDM server is looking at consolidating all of those and bringing them together in a much more complex fashion than is currently supported in, let's say, quality stage, but actually through probabilistic methods determining whether Frank Fillmore and Frank C. Fillmore and Frank C. Fillmore Jr. are all the same person, and actually inferring that Francis Fillmore, who lives at the same address as Frank Fillmore, is actually the same person, and two people who share the same telephone number may be related in some way, and so forth. So bringing all this data together. The InfoSphere Identity Insight is the legacy entity analytics. It is the who is who and who knows who. So taking that to a different level for fraud detection purposes, identifying that the slip and fall that just occurred outside your store, who is suing you now, is actually related to the security guard who took the report. They may share a title to an automobile or something like that. And so being able to identify those types of relationships. This is actually technology which was originally developed in the gaming industry in Las Vegas to cut down on fraud between players and dealers. So master data management is a discipline that provides consistent understanding of master data entities. So a master data entity may be a customer, maybe a product, maybe a service that you offer, maybe a patient. There are a variety of different master data entities. But even from the product standpoint, if you've ever searched for something online, a company may store their own part number, the manufacturer's part number, an SKU number. You may be searching on one, but it would be stored as something else. So the ability to bring all these different part numbers together in the part description and realize that they're all the same thing is very important. So we can see an example here where B. Jones and William Jones, Bill Jones and William Jones, are actually the same person, but Billy Jones, living at a slightly different address, is a completely different person and shouldn't be harmonized together. Master data management would enable you to bring all that together and then give a single view of this customer to your sales, customer support, and claims applications. Entity resolution and analysis. So I mentioned the who is who and who knows who. So I establish identity through physical or digital characteristics to identify relationships that are both obvious and non-obvious. Sibling relationships where people have different names but may share certain characteristics, and being able to identify those together, and the degrees of separation, and then complex event processing, events and transactions that allow you to quantify the identity activities and be able to take some action such as fraud and threat alerts. So I'm going to take a break here because we have basically completed the information integration. We're going to talk a little bit about PureScale for a second, but I see some questions, so let me bring those up. Yeah. I'm seeing the blink, but I'm not seeing the question. So if anyone has a question at this point, we'd certainly like to entertain those now. You can either use the chat or the question capability, post something and let us know or raise your hand and I can open your mic. Variety of different ways that you can interact. Okay, so I'm going to continue on. We're about 40 minutes into the presentation and we still have a bunch of material to cover, so we'll save some Q&A time at the end. So IBM's PureScale is the ability to run a DB2 database for high availability and virtually unlimited capacity. The way that it works, again pulling up the highlighter, is very similar to the DB2 for ZOS mainframe capability of parallel sysplex. So I have multiple redundant servers that we see here, all accessing a single copy of the data back here. This is known as a shared disk environment. So, for example, I may need to add capacity during a high transaction processing season, such as retailers between October and February. I may need to add capacity or remove capacity, or I may just want to be able to manage my environment. So if a single server goes out, I can still function, do a hot swap of a server that has failed, move another server in, and not experience any disruption in my transaction flow. All transparent to applications. PureScale is extremely efficient with near linear scalability. That is, for each additional member that I add, I get additional processing capability equal to that which I am adding. There's very little overhead. It is much more efficient than the rack clustering technology that Oracle uses, in that it uses centralized locking and caching. So there isn't a polling of the different members when you want to access a row to find out if another member has that. So rack generally scales 6, 8, somewhere along those lines. IBM has scaled this in the lab to dozens of members and not seen a fall off. So complete redundancy, centralized locking, a group buffer pool, and group lock management, all connected via a coupling facility. So very large growth footprint and high availability with near zero downtime. So IBM's data warehouse solutions, there are a couple of different ways that you can go. And you see the chart here from simplicity on the left to flexibility on the right. Simplicity being represented by the IBM Netezza appliance. This is a combination of hardware and software that comes off the loading dock. You plug it in, you load your data, and you're ready to go. Netezza's architecture uses something called field programmable gate arrays, or FPGAs. And the ability to use the FPGA means that the data is filtered almost at the time of disk read, very, very quickly before it even gets to memory or in the buffer pool, which is where a lot of the analysis of data in traditional relational databases occurs. So if I filter the data at the I/O level and I'm not performing unnecessary I/Os, I don't need things like indexes, materialized query tables, MDCs, or any of the techniques that database administrators use to try to speed access to the data. So it makes the modeling exercise very fast and very simple. I don't have to worry about all these other components. I only have to worry about the data elements I'm interested in, load them into the data warehouse, and then access them. And we're seeing query times reduced from hours to minutes and minutes to seconds. So orders of magnitude improvements in performance. Very easy to administer and deploy. Then next to the, I'm going to go all the way to the right now to the IBM InfoSphere warehouse. The warehouse is built on a DB2 database, but has a number of ancillary products that come with it. So a slimmed down version of the InfoSphere Data Architect modeling tool, a SQW transformation tool. It is not anywhere near as powerful or as capable as DataStage, but allows you to move data from a DB2 database into a DB2 database, let's say from transaction processing into an OLAP cube. All of these components are bundled together into the InfoSphere Warehouse bundle and then made available in the middle on the IBM Smart Analytics system. The Smart Analytics system is basically the hardware and the InfoSphere Warehouse combined together on a pre-configured basis in the case of the Smart Analytics system known as ISAS, so that you can add storage, add processing capability, do it in defined chunks. These systems are pre-configured so you don't have to spend a lot of time on the upfront sizing and determining how much you need. You can grow in an orderly fashion, both hardware and software. So I'd mentioned the Netezza warehouse appliances. The Smart Analytics system is available even on a virtualized VMware instance, so you could actually install this on your own hardware if you wanted to for a development environment or to get small and grow. The InfoSphere Warehouse, I'd mentioned on LUW and the capability that is included in there. The industry models are products of IBM consulting engagements within industries like banking, insurance, financial markets, telecommunications, that will actually help you build a data model based on best practices from the consultants who've worked in those industries for a long time. By leveraging that, again, you can get time to value reduced so that you're able to implement your solutions much more quickly without having to go through the data modeling and data design phases. Big data is very hot. If you've spoken to an IBM Information Management rep in the last 3 months, you've heard a lot about big data. It's a big emphasis for IBM. This is represented by 2 IBM products. Big Insights is IBM's implementation of the MapReduce Hadoop data model, so different than relational databases, originally developed by Google. And then the InfoSphere Stream, so the ability to pick through data that's coming through real time. What we're discovering with a lot of numerical processing these days is that we only need to analyze the data as it occurs. We don't need to gather it and store it indefinitely. So some examples of real-time events are flying an airliner. I saw the statistic, I think every air flight these days in the newest airliners generates 20 gigabytes of information. That's every flight. Based on all of the monitors and the tooling which actually enables the plane to fly. So do we actually need to store 20 gigabytes per flight? Well, maybe not. Maybe some set of that for maintenance purposes or to use for future predictive capabilities as to when we may need to retire the fleet. But it would be very interesting to be able to read that data real time and determining if anything bad is happening and allow the pilot to take corrective action. So streams allows us to analyze data as it's coming in for threat analysis or other purposes, and then not necessarily retain it or keep it and store it for later. So the warehouse and analytics ecosystem, we've seen this chart a couple of times now, so hopefully you understand a little bit better what happens in the managed space where I store my data, where I analyze my content or I get my streaming information, the integration space, master data management, federation, replication, and the ability to analyze my data, such as big data, whether it's structured or streams or unstructured data. So, IBM's strategic direction is to leverage data and resources in new ways to drive growth in your business, to allow you to enter new markets or exploit existing markets more fully, to maintain high service quality, so to identify who your customers are, their propensity to buy, to offer them products that they are likely to be interested in, to reduce the marketing costs so that you're not doing outreach to customers who are unlikely to buy, to reduce operational costs and identify what they are. I saw a statistic the other day about retail banking customers that such a large percentage of retail banking customers actually cost banks money just to have deposits there based on all of the administration of an account. For the telecommunications industry, the propensity to churn, people dropping one service plan and moving to another or getting a new phone, identifying who those customers are, identifying the customers who are likely to use lots of data bandwidth, and either to sell them a a higher capacity plan, or to identify that maybe they're not people that you want to market to because they'll strain your network. And to use information as a strategic asset, so unlock the business value. We have lots of information that we're gathering from our businesses on a daily basis, but using that beyond its operational purposes of processing a transaction or a purchase order or a payment or an invoice, and be able to use that in order to make informed business decisions is very important. And then finally, to improve customer satisfaction. We want people to want to do business with our organizations. How do we do that? We improve the customer experience. We make it easier for them to do business with us. We don't waste their time, and that will increase customer satisfaction and their customer recidivism. So I talked about the industry models, the big data, and the streams. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that. You could see some examples of big data. The characteristics of big data are the V's. So it's the velocity of data, that is how quickly it's changing, how quickly it's moving. The volume of data, up to 10,000 times larger than the data that we've dealt with before. The veracity of the data, that is, it may be very incomplete or untrue information. So think of things like Twitter feeds, which are not moderated or edited. An urban myth may start out on Twitter, and we need to be able to filter that out very quickly and not make business decisions that are based on something that's just not true. So volume, veracity, velocity, and I know I'm forgetting one. And Kim, if you want to jump on here, tell me what the other V is for big data as we proceed.
Variety. I think
variety. That's what it was. The variety. And the variety is all the different data. So I could have photos, I could have video, I could have textual information, I could have structured and unstructured information, I could have songs. So all of those are the typical of big data. Stream computing, I mentioned the real-time analytical processing, the ability to look at the data as it's occurring and take action based on that. We're going to talk for a second about the mainframes. IBM's mainframes are experiencing a resurgence. IBM has sold more mainframe capacity in the last 5 quarters than they did in the 5 years before that. Much of the mainframe adoption is going out through developing economies. They see this as a very cost-effective way to get into the game quickly. There is a bias against mainframes in some parts of the industry, and that may have to do with some long-held and no longer accurate views of the way mainframes work or how difficult they are to use. But an example that I just gave the other day, I have an iPad 2 and I have a Cognos app, and I'm able to access Cognos demos on a System Z mainframe. You can see the growth year over year of the installed mainframe capacity. And then something that we're very excited about here at the Fillmore Group is something that IBM is calling the IBM DB2 Analytics Accelerator, or IDAA. The purpose of the IDAA is to serve as an outboard analytics engine for very complex query processing. So transparent to your DB2 for ZOS SQL workload, the DB2 optimizer may say, here is a query that I'm receiving that could actually be processed much better and faster on a Netezza box than I could do it natively, and actually offload that query for processing to Netezza, bring the answer set back, and present it to the application without application modification. So I don't have to go back and rewrite any of my applications, but I can get a very impressive jump in performance, orders of magnitude faster query processing, just by marrying the Netezza appliance to the System Z, either the Z196 or the Z114. And you can see some speeds and feeds here, whereas a query that ran in 2 hours ran in 5 seconds. So almost 2,000 times as fast. So just incredible orders of magnitude improvement in performance. And the Fillmore Group is actually going to be offering a hands-on IDAA class here in our Towson classroom week after next. It'll be the first one offered outside the IBM laboratories for some of our consultants, for IBM technical specialists, and also for a few customers. So we see this as a huge opportunity in the mainframe space to increase the analytical capabilities of DB2 for z/OS and the performance without a large investment. And again, some speeds and feeds. Very quickly, I want to mention the Oracle takeout. So a couple of metrics that are very important to understand. One is that the DB2 Advanced Enterprise Server Edition can be priced as low as 1/3 the price of Oracle. The DB2 AESE, we did a presentation on that earlier, and it's going to be on the blog later today. But the AESE packaging includes things like compression, performance optimization, replication, all in a single package, tooling from Optum for database administration and application development. DB2 on Power, that is on the System P, can be 3 times as fast per core as Oracle Database on Spark. And you can see the reference points for both the price and the performance down the bottom, the TPC benchmarks, and the pricing of the IBM software. IBM in version 9.7 of DB2 has enabled the Oracle APIs so that 98% of your Oracle PL SQL code should run unmodified against the DB2 database. So a powerful message for customers who are paying a lot for their ongoing licensing charges from Oracle. So you can see the TPC benchmarks, the adoption of DB2 throughout banking, healthcare, retailers, and packaged applications. We can help you decide whether there is an economic case, because this is a decision, the Oracle versus DB2 decision is frequently made in the CFO office rather than in the glass house or the technology corridors. The idea is, how much money can we save? There is a business value assessment tool that if you are an Oracle shop and would contemplate the move to DB2, we can help you cost justify it and tell you what the return on investment is going to be, taking your current Oracle licensing information and plugging it into the calculator and determining what the best move is in terms of DB2 licensing costs. And some testimonials for transaction workloads on DB2. So from migration to discovery to implementation, we review the business value using the VBA tool, calculate the ROI, perform an application migration test, pull some small applications and some subsets of data, run your application to show you that it still runs the way that it does now without modification for the most part, get some training, perform a POC, review a proposal, and then convert. And I think I mentioned earlier in the class that we worked on one of the largest Oracle to DB2 migrations to date last year in 2011. A large top 50 worldwide financial services firm moved their entire online banking system to DB2 from Oracle and was able to accomplish the first step of that within 3 months. We were able to get the first sets of database over from a standing start to full production, live, accessed by the customer in about 90 days. So some good information about IBM databases, and I'll let you see that when you download the presentation afterwards. I know we're getting pretty close to our time. So I wanted to hit the summary. It is important that IT investment be driven by the business needs, both the business needs of what is it that we as a business want to accomplish, what are our goals and missions and objectives, and also from the business standpoint of how can we save money through server consolidation, through green initiatives, through reducing our software licensing costs, simplifying our administration. The Oracle to DB2 migration that I had mentioned earlier reduced the number of servers that were being managed by this particular company from hundreds down to dozens. So just a huge reduction in the level of complexity, which made their organization a lot simpler to manage and a lot less likely to make mistakes. And as you can see by this nasty chart over on the side, complexity is a bad thing. So one of the things that the Fillmore group brings to the party is reducing maybe all of the different voices that you may be hearing from IBM. We work across the IM portfolio. Sometimes different salespeople have different comp plans and are incented to sell you different things, and you may be getting competing advice from two different people from the same company. We can help you sort through that. So I'd like to thank you for your time today. I am going to go back and check and see if we have any questions. My contact information is on the chart. I'm going to be putting this presentation, both the screen presentations as well as the audio, up on our blog sometime this afternoon or tomorrow. So if you have a colleague who was unable to join it or you'd like to download the materials from attending, we'd love to have you do that. So with that, I'm going to bring up the questions. And again, I'm not seeing any. Oh, wait a minute. I do see one. And questions. Give me just a second. I saw the question about the BVA tool. Is the BVA tool similar to the BVA tool for DB210 for ZOS? And that's from Junaid in Turkey. Hello, Junaid. I don't know for sure. Are the BVA tools the same? Kim, do you know if it's the same BVA tool for DB2 for Linux, Unix, Windows? I would think that they would have to be different because I think I would think that they would have to be different, but I'd have to get you that answer offline. I don't know offhand.
I think they actually are different. I think, Frank, when we were in Dallas in January, was it Dallas? Anyway, in January, they rolled out the new BVA tool, and the BVA tool for DB2 for Linux, Unix, Windows is new, and it's pretty slick. But yeah, the metrics are different. You're measuring different things for licensing. Okay, thank you. And the one last thing I need to add, and when we talk about new stuff, is for those of you who are unaware, DB2 for Linux, Unix, Windows version 10 was announced this past Tuesday, April 3rd. So this presentation was built on the then current version of all of the products, which were version 9 and related products throughout the portfolio. But be aware that DB2 for Linux, Unix, Windows v10, codenamed Galileo, was announced last Tuesday, and you'll be seeing a lot of that in the social networking sphere. If you have any questions about that, what some of the feature functionality beyond the scope of this presentation of the new stuff that's coming out, but be aware that that's available as well. And with that, I think I'm going to bring this to a close. I don't see any other questions or hands raised. So I want to thank everyone for attending today and participating, and look for the presentation to be posted within a few hours. Take care and have a good day.